Welcome, Kevin Murphy, to Northwestern Voices. Kevin, you are the coach of the Varsity High School Park Rapids team in baseball.
Yes, that is correct.
And I was really looking forward to this because I'm a big baseball fan. That's it. That's the whole explanation. So, I want to start by talking about sort of how a baseball player develops. And so when is it the right time for a parent to take a child out and start working on some fundamental exercises, and what exercises might those be?
Well, depending on the development of the child, kids start developing motor skills, fine motor skills, very young ages. As early as 1 to 2 years old, kids can be out and learning how to throw, how to catch, how to swing a bat, hand-eye coordination, hitting off of a tee, just seeing a ball tossed to them, and when they start to catch it, even with two hands, So anywhere in that area for age, I would say.
What was the age?
Somewhere around around 1 to 2 years old.
1 to 2 years old. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to be the Earl Woods of baseball, right? Like I was really I had a focus on really making sure that my my child was going to develop into be the best baseball player he could be. What would you recommend at that age? Just in terms of the amount of time spent on it and kind of drills or practice.
Yeah, at a young age?
At a young age, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I would. If you're going 1 to 2 years old, we're talking like throwing a soft little ball to them to see if they can catch it and, throw it back and just kind of work on. I think the big thing at that age is going to be your hand-eye coordination starts to develop. And so I think just tracking anything, whether it's a tennis ball or a kickball or a basketball, something like that. That's probably the best. How much time would you put into it? Oh, it's not. You don't need to be outside demanding them throw bullpen sessions at 2 years old or anything. But I would say that's really where it starts to develop those motor skills.
When can I remember when I was a kid and playing Little League, or even playing like soccer or something like that. And it was at the kindergarten or first grade where you could really start to see who the really good players were going to be, even at that young age. Like, how do you notice that sort of thing, and how young can it be when where a kid really starts to stand out as, hey, this guy could potentially be good at this?
Yeah, I think you see that at, like you said, as young as kindergarten. 5, 6 years old, you can start to see kids in their athletic ability, but for some kids it takes quite a bit longer to develop too. And when sometimes those kids who develop very quickly, it can kind of be a blessing and a curse. It depends, I guess, on the kid and the situation. But there have been a lot of kids. I've been involved in youth baseball for many, many years. When I was in college at Bemidji State, I helped run the Bemidji Youth League. And so I worked with, we had like 15 coaches, something like that, and we ran all of the T-ball for 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. And you can see those kids, and they're really leaps and bounds ahead of their peers at that age. And then sometimes you'll see them as they get older kind of fizzle out of sports.
Yeah.
Whether you want to call it peaking too early or whatnot. I hate it when kids peak at 6 years old, but no, I think they it's important not to judge kids too early, I think. And there's a lot of pressure, I think, today in society with sports and youth sports at really pushing development super early, And I think that it's important to let kids be kids and let them develop on their own. And some of the best baseball players that you see probably weren't very good at 5 or 6 years old. And I think that's okay. So when you start looking at, what age group do you start to notice kids who really develop? Well, it just depends on the kid. So I think you kind of have to be patient on that and keep an eye on them for quite a few years to finally know.
Probably differs between those who you're kind of looking at as potential pitchers too.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the throwing ability is something that, you typically don't see kids change the way that they throw a whole lot. Sometimes kids will tweak their swings or things like that, but when you see somebody's arm action and throwing, it usually doesn't change a whole lot over time. That muscle memory is hard to try and change. And so you see even in like the big leagues right now, you'll see guys with pretty funky deliveries. And, first one that comes to my mind is Chris Sale.
Yeah.
First time I ever saw him throw, I went, oh my gosh, how is his arm still attached to his body? What?
Yeah, it's a real unorthodox. It's sort of like a 3/4 sidearm delivery or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, the one that got a couple. I guess when I think of a weird delivery, I always go back to like the 1/4 sidearm delivery, like somebody like Dan Quisenberry. You don't remember.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but he has that sort of really weird delivery, but. When I think of when you said that about how the throwing style doesn't really change, I thought of somebody like Randy Johnson, who I saw play a lot during the course of his career, and just thinking, when was it when they took a look at this kid and said, "Wow, you're going to be a special kind of talent." Was it when he was 8, 9, 10 years old? And if you're saying the throwing style doesn't change, that might be
Yeah. Yeah, and it could be. It's kind of certain people, people's muscles will develop different ways. And so sometimes you have that little bit of an unorthodox delivery, even at a young age. I've seen like 7-year-olds who throw, and it's a little bit funky. And then I've seen them, I'm old enough now that I've seen those kids develop into high school players. And I watch them play, and I'm like, wow, he still throws the same way he did when he was 7 years old. And he still throws really hard, and he's still really good.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
it's
think
hard. It's hard, like you say, though, muscle memory, right? Because I think also of remember how in football, Tim Tebow, they said he didn't have the pro style delivery, and you're like, well, you think to yourself, well, that's simple, just show him how to throw the ball correctly, and then he'll be able to use his other skills and be a good quarterback. But he could never learn it.
Yeah.
Even from I guess the college to the pro level, he wasn't able to make that adjustment. So it seems like how you throw is how you throw.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I think so in a lot of cases.
When is it that a kid first, starts to say, okay, well, I am more of a pitcher, than a position player?
I think that really would be more when you start getting into high school, I would say. Yeah. We really promote, and I think it's pretty much across the board with baseball, you try to get as many kids pitching as you can, just because you always need more pitchers. Mm-hmm. No matter what level you're at, what age group, whatever your level of competition, you always need more pitchers. And I think when kids start to decide that that's just what they want to do is usually in situations where they're junior, senior year of high school, and they're thinking that for college, maybe.
Okay. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, and sometimes they'll turn pitchers into position players, and even vice versa, even after they start like a professional career. Even there's a couple of guys I was thinking of that did that. Like, remember Rick Ankiel?
Oh yeah,
from St. Louis.
Yep.
And he got the yips when he was a pitcher. And then he actually went on to become a pretty good outfielder, which was kind of amazing to think, because normally you think, well, it's either you got to be one or the other. How could you be so good? Of course, you got Shohei Ohtani.
I want to say, I think, was it Jacob DeGrom, who has been one of the better pitchers in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
I think he started as a shortstop, if I'm not mistaken.
Did he really?
Yeah, so, there's a lot of guys that you see who are position players that when they're throwing it across the diamond at 99 miles an hour, and their coaches go, I wonder if we put him on the mound.
They could whip it. Yeah. Hey, I mean, I guess if you've got a stronger, but I mean, like then you got somebody like Matt Wallner who, has got an incredible cannon, but for whatever reason they just decided, oh, let's not do that. I mean, I suppose it depends on the guy too.
Yeah.
It's really hard to throw strikes.
Yeah. I think the mental part of it is probably the biggest that guys have to overcome when they're pitching compared to being in the field.
I wanted to ask you about that, just that I jogged my memory thinking about the Rick Ankiel story, but while we're on the subject of the yips, do you ever see guys at the high school level get that? And Knobloch had it too. Remember when he played for the Yankees?
Yep.
So what do you tell a kid like that, as a coach?
Yeah, it's a tough spot. I don't, I've had just maybe, I can think of one or two times where I've had a pitcher who has the yips really in a game. And I just had to pull him out of the game.
Yeah.
Because I think I had one who beaned 3 kids in a row.
Oh.
And he had, for 2 or 3 innings before that, was pitching great and looked good. And he was throwing hard off the mound. He was a 13-year-old at the time, which is weird to think of a 13-year-old getting the yips.
Yeah.
But a 13-year-old who threw 3 innings, did great, was really looking good. And then all of a sudden, 4th inning, it was like ball to the backstop, beans the kid, and then just kept hitting kids over and over. And I went, okay, well, got to make a change now.
What causes that?
I don't know. I think it's just kind of a mental part of the game that's difficult sometimes to control. Just forget how to get back into, it's easy to say trust your muscle memory, go back to your mechanics, but sometimes it's hard to, what are my mechanics again?
Yeah.
And that's the part that
you overthink it.
Yeah, a lot of overthinking.
I gotta think that, like, if you're a pitcher, it's got to be so easy to just overthink every single little movement that you're making, and I don't know. You think of some of the guys in the big leagues now, and I almost feel like the less you think, it's probably better. But Duran, like when I think of Duran, like somebody's throwing 102, 103 consistently, I always think to myself, like, he probably just goes up there and says to himself, I'm going to throw this as hard as I can right now and trust that it's going to go over the plate. He does it.
Yeah, probably true. Yeah.
But others that have to rely a little bit more on their savvy and their film research and everything like that, they probably have to do a lot of thinking about each pitch.
Yeah, absolutely.
So all right, we talked about how the age for getting the kid sort of physically prepared, doing the different drills and stuff like that. So I wanted to talk about the game itself. So I've had over the years I've been tasked before with going to a baseball game with somebody from a foreign country and then trying to explain to them how baseball works. And okay, so we don't call them goals, we call them runs, and and how that, and just the rules of the game basically. So how young do you find, or when's the appropriate age to sit down with a child and be like, hey, I want you to pay attention to this and show you how the game works? I suppose that might differ too, but
yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think baseball is awesome because I would say even globally, when you look at sports, I think basketball is making a big push right now to be more international, but I think historically soccer probably more ubiquitous around the world.
Yep.
And then I would say second is probably going to be close to baseball at that point. I think it's really spread a lot throughout the 1900s to a lot of different countries around the world and become popular there. But age-wise, to understand it, boy, I think if you're trying to get a kid to learn the game of baseball, somewhere around 7, 8 years old, start watching a game, watch quite a few innings in a row at least of Major League Baseball. is usually the easiest to follow. Sometimes college baseball is becoming more popular now, but yeah, I would say somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Start them young.
And get it and start feeding them the baseball cards too, right?
Oh, yeah.
That definitely helps.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I remember when I was a kid, we used to collect baseball cards, and also we get the newspaper, and you could read all the box scores in the newspaper. And now, of course, they don't have that anymore.
Yep.
But that was kind of a part of it when you're a kid and trying to say, "Oh, I wonder how Tony Gwynn did last night." You know, you look, and it was like, 3 for 5 with 3 singles or something like that. But to get them interested, I mean, I think there's a lot of competition for the attention of kids these days. When you think about iPads and video games and all that stuff, how do you? I mean, and just assuming that getting a kid interested in baseball is something that is preferable to a lot of that. How do you get a kid, interested in something like that, as opposed to, I don't want to necessarily call it mindless entertainment, but I'll call it mindless entertainment of, videos, video games, and everything else on the internet.
Yeah, so I think one way that you almost combat that is if they are doing iPad time or they're going to spend time playing video games or something, there's baseball video games out there too.
Yeah.
So there's sports games. I know a lot of kids will play Madden for football, or they'll play NBA, 2K, whatever it is, and MLB The Show. So video games can be kind of a fun pathway into sports too, and a good way for kids to learn the game, doing it themselves, seeing different situations that they create. So I actually like it sometimes when the kids say, I'll have high school players even talk about, hey, tonight you guys want to play MLB The Show tonight?
Yeah.
Like I'll play it tonight online. Let's go at 7:30.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
right. As a substitute for television or something else that would have been there. But I guess what I'm trying to get is how do you get kids away from these things so they can actually go out and participate in this stuff rather than in the daytime, let's say.
Yeah.
But just doing it constantly with the video game rather than say, hey, let's go out and throw the baseball around, or let's go have a pickup game or something like that.
Yeah, that seems like it's changed a lot. I think probably from your generation, my generation, we were much more apt to let's go do that. Nowadays you don't see that as often. I think you still do. We kind of don't want to say we, being older than the current generation in high school,
I know
we tend to jump into, well, back
Kids
in my
these days,
day, we did it so much better. But I do think that there's a little bit of a problem right now with kids getting outside and doing more. And I think the flip side is, when we were kids, there probably wasn't as much organized youth activity specific for our sports. Maybe there was still Little League, a night or 2 or 3 a week, whatever it might be. I think for kids nowadays, especially in the summertime when they have the most freedom, they're getting pulled into weight room, basketball, football camps, baseball league. I mean, there's so many things that are pulling kids, and then it's lake time, fishing, friends.
Yeah.
And so it may not be that they're completely not going out and playing a pickup, baseball sandlot game somewhere. I think it might be that they're just so busy with a lot of things in their lives that it's more of a busy time now than it was maybe when we were kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's probably the parents are the ones that are responsible for that more than anyone else.
Yeah.
Right? So can you just give me a quick overview of the system here in Park Rapids? So what's from the youngest age that you can enroll in baseball or t-ball, whatever it is, all the way up through to the varsity system? Yeah,
so we go with a summer program for the youth that's around 5 years old. In t-ball, going up, you get to about 12 years old through with it's Cal Ripken kind of Little League style. And that's all in the summertime. So we'll start that towards the tail end of the school year in May. And then when they get into 13 years old, 13, they get onto the big field. Okay. So below that, 12 and below, they're on a smaller baseball field, the Little League field. And then they're on the big field when they hit 13.
It's regulation field.
Regulation field, 90-foot bases, 60-foot, 6-inch mound. Yeah, and that's kind of their first experience with it. And what's nice about it is when they're in 7th grade in school, that's when we start our school-affiliated baseball. So around that, 13, they might still be 12 depending on the kid, but they get that experience in school against other schools in a little more serious way of what baseball is going to be for them for the foreseeable future. And then that summer they get to play Babe Ruth, which is on the regular field also. And then after that, Babe Ruth, we've got a couple of age groups for Babe Ruth. Last year we had a Junior Legion program, and this year we'll have a Senior Legion program.
That's going into your senior year, going into your junior year?
So Senior Legion is anything from 19 years old and younger.
Okay. So
sometimes you get the occasional college freshman who comes back and will play because they're 19 and they were young enough. But that's typically your varsity baseball team. So as far as school ball goes, we start in 7th grade. So you've got youth baseball in the summer all the way up to that. Then we start the spring and summer seasons together with, once you're 13, you're playing school ball and summer ball. And that carries all the way through their high school career.
Okay. So basically everything is from 5 years to graduated from high school, and that's all organized baseball, and it sounds like there's a good foundation for that. How much traveling would a parent have to expect from at the different levels of baseball?
Yeah, so most of what we do at the youth level is in-house, so it's all takes place here in Park Rapids. They split. A lot of different kids will come out and play. Usually somewhere from 90 to 100 kids at each age group come out and play. Okay. And so they'll split them into teams, and then they rotate playing each other.
Okay, so local teams then, yeah.
Yep, yep. And then as they get older, there's more interest in other things to do. So some kids will stop playing baseball as they get a little older, and it starts to kind of narrow down to the kids who are going to continue playing baseball out of that group. And you start to see more travel. It kind of depends on how you want to do it. We've had some coaches who are parents who have done travel teams at 12 years old or 11 years old, and they'll go do some tournaments on the weekends and then still play in-house games during the week.
Okay. So those are kind of more like those all-star team type of things?
Yeah, and those will happen every once in a while here for Park Rapids. It kind of depends on the numbers. If you get a group of kids that get together and really have a lot that want to travel and play, then they usually have more success at doing that.
Yeah.
You see it even as they get to the varsity level. I'll have some classes that come in, and I have 5 kids out of the entire class that are playing baseball.
Yeah.
And then another class, I have 17. And you're like, whoa,
yeah.
what happened?
There, yeah.
But that's kind of high school sports.
Yeah. So that's basically like if you're going to take 5 and 17 and so like your average number of players per class is somewhere around 10 or something, would you say?
Yeah, I would say. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And that's what you're given to work with.
Yep.
What are some of the challenges that you experience coaching at just at the high school level in general? I mean, not necessarily challenges that are particular to Park Rapids, but what are some of the things that you find to be sort of difficult or challenges to overcome?
I think one of the big challenges for any northern Minnesota baseball coach is finding new drills you can do inside, because most of our season, the first half of our season usually ends up being indoors in the gym.
Yeah.
So that's a huge challenge, is trying to find ways to keep the guys motivated to keep coming to practice, because it gets to be such really a drag, I think, mentally even, that basketball, you're going to be in the gym,
Yeah.
Baseball just feels abnormal being in a gymnasium as opposed to being outside.
Right.
Everything's different.
Yeah.
So,
and it's probably a lot harder to do any kind of hitting inside, right?
yeah. And even just picking up the ball from you've got a white gym wall and you're trying to pick up a white baseball, and then you get outside and you're like, what is this blue sky out there?
So when does the first game happen?
Depending on the weather,
Yeah.
we usually, I would say a typical season here, we would start playing mid to later April.
Okay, but it is weather depending, because of course here we get blizzards in April and all that stuff too. So it's that first kind of month and a half of getting the guys in shape for the season.
Yep.
Yeah. And then what about just in terms of team composition and stuff like that? Like you oftentimes you don't have a lot of people to work with, and I know, like, for instance, in hockey this year, they had a tremendous goalie, senior captain goalie, and all that stuff, but he got hurt and wasn't able to play for the first 3 games. And somebody else who was not a goalie had to come in and step up, and hats off to him and stuff like that. But I'm assuming that you probably have some challenges like that as well, just because of the number of kids that you're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. We end up getting some injuries here and there. That goalie was one of our captains last year also for baseball.
Oh, he was. Okay, yeah. I didn't even know. I didn't talk to him about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so he'll be playing for us again this year.
Oh, good.
And dealing with those same injuries that we're dogging him all winter on the ice. And I've been talking to him about it, and hoping that he can get to a little more closer to full strength. But we deal with injuries quite a bit with baseball too. That's why next guy up. That's where sometimes it's nice having. You want to have pretty good numbers and put yourself in a position where it's you have to make tough decisions on who's going to get more playing time.
Yeah.
But that's what you hope for a little bit as a coach, that you have enough
depth.
Kids. Yeah, that you have that depth to work with.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this team since we're we already talked about, is Sawyer going to be the captain of the baseball team, or you haven't decided that yet?
We'll see. I'll let the guys decide when we start going.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about this year's squad. What can we expect?
Yeah, I think I'm expecting a pretty good group of guys. Mm-hmm. We're going to need a lot of kids to step up this year. We graduated about 4 seniors that played significant time last year. We're going to have about the same amount this year that played significant time. We had a few freshmen last year that played a good amount. Our starting catcher, he played most of our games as a freshman. Mm-hmm. We threw him out there to actually give Sawyer a break because he was our catcher, and we played quite a few double headers with our conference opponents. And so I said, well, instead of catching 14 straight innings, let's try and get somebody else some time behind the plate and give him a break.
Yeah.
And this freshman came in and caught for us and really put us in a spot where I don't think we can take him off the field. He's doing a great job.
Yeah.
And so he was our catcher the rest of the year.
Huh.
So I'm looking forward to that. I think we got a lot of good sophomores. There's a very talented class there. Our junior class is a small group. There's 4 baseball players out of the junior class.
Small, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then our senior class, we've got a couple that are playing baseball for the first time, and a couple that'll be looking to contribute more on varsity than they did last year as juniors. So I'm excited about it. I think we have a lot of good pieces there. I think we have pretty good depth, but the depth that we have and a lot of the kids that we have who we're going to need to step up and start and play significant innings don't have a lot of varsity experience. Played mostly JV as freshmen.
Yep.
And I'm excited to see what those kids can do, though.
Yeah. So what conference are you in, and who else is in the conference?
So we're this year, our last year of the Mid-State Conference. So we're moving into a conference called the Heart of Lakes Conference, and that'll take place next year. This year, Pequot Lakes was in our conference, the Mid-State Conference, but they left, so they're no longer in it this year. We have Park Rapids, Detroit Lakes, Aiken, Staples Motley, and Crosby Ironton.
Okay. Yep. And how many games are in a season?
The high school league has a maximum of 20 games. So you try to shoot for 20 games each year, and then depending on weather, see where you end up. We've been able to get 20 games in every year that I've been here, so that's been good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, and so like in hockey, we just saw the high school hockey tournament that happened. Edina won, and St. Cloud Cathedral. I know it was Edina won. It was like, but and they also smoked Grand Rapids along the way, which is that was also it was well, no, I got a lot of friends who are Edina grads, and so nothing negative about Edina, but anyway, in baseball, how many divisions are there?
There are 4.
Okay, and which is it like A, double A, triple A? How? Okay.
Yep. It goes A, double A, triple A, and then 4A.
So 4A would be the biggest school?
Yes. Yep.
So where does Park Rapids fall on that?
So we fall into double A.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then how does the postseason tournament work for baseball?
So for our section, we're in section 8 double A, and we have 2 halves of a section because we have a pretty big section. And we split it into north and south is how it goes. And Park Rapids, we're in the north. Sometimes that will change here and there, but we've been in the north for quite a few years now. So there'll be 8 teams in each half. And how it works is you play 1 game, single elimination, loser goes home, season's over. And then the winners advance to an 8-team double elimination bracket.
Okay, double elimination. And then there's ultimately a section champion.
Yes.
That's the winner of the double elimination tournament.
Yep.
And then there's a state tournament. Mm-hmm. Where is that played?
So the first rounds are usually played for Class 2A, we play in St. Cloud. Mm-hmm. So that would be where the first, I believe, 2 rounds are. And then the championship game is held, and depending on the schedules with the Twins and the Saints, it's either at CHS Field where the Saints play, or it's at Target Field.
They actually will play the high school tournament at Target Field. That's so cool.
Yeah, so 2 years ago it was at Target Field, and I actually went to those games and watched. That was when Roseau, out of our section, was in the championship game. Oh. And last year, Perham, out of our section, was also in the championship game.
Well, they played at CHF?
And they played at CHS.
Yeah. Those are both really cool stadiums. Mm-hmm. It's really fun to go to the CHS. Did I say that right? S or F?
Yeah,
CHS. But obviously Target Field's awesome. I actually got to go to the Twins game last year when they won their first playoff game in like 22 years or whatever it was against Toronto.
Yeah.
And then we always get a good crew together for opening day and head down there for that. So
nice.
And then I go a whole bunch of times during the middle of the season too. I love going to ball games. So I'm definitely going to want to check you guys out this year. So where do you play your home games then?
Our home games we play at the high school.
Okay.
It's just, I guess it would be just southwest of the football field.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yep, we have 2 fields there, right back to back, the JV and the varsity field.
And when your games, are they typically in the evenings, or are they?
We don't have lights at our fields, so we play usually at 4 if it's a doubleheader.
Yep.
And then 4:30 if it's a single game is when we'll start it.
So you'll play 14 straight innings of baseball from 4
till dark. Yeah.
Do you have some food or something in the dugout that you're eating between games or something?
Yeah, between games, kids will go to the concession stand usually and get a hot dog or a burger or something to get them some fuel for the next game.
Good baseball food, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Park Rapids, and this is going to be. I hope that you guys have a tremendous season this year, and if people want to know when the games are and stuff like that, is there like a Park Rapids baseball, support page on Facebook, or how do they like? Where's your schedule posted?
Yeah, so we'll be posting our schedule on our Facebook page. We do have a Park Rapids baseball Facebook page that you can follow, but also you can follow the schedule of games for all levels at the Park Rapids High School website.
Oh, just go right to the
website, go to the activities calendar, and then you can look for baseball and see the schedule.
All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about your personal career as a player. You played at BSU?
Yep.
Okay. Do you do any of the town ball stuff or anything like that?
Yeah, I've played the last few years for the Park Rapids Esox.
The Esox, okay.
Yeah. Prior to that, I played town ball in Bemidji for the Bemidji Mudcats. And yeah, I've played town ball quite a bit throughout my life.
You enjoy that?
I do.
Do they play 9?
Yep, 9 innings.
Okay. Yep. So I saw from the bio that you sent over that you're primarily a relief pitcher in college.
Yep.
Okay. So what pitches did you have, and sort of what was your role on the team then?
Yeah. So I primarily through, early on in my career, even in high school, I could throw pretty hard, and going into college, I actually hurt my arm and got an MRI, felt my elbow pop, and that wasn't very fun. Went in, got an MRI, partially tore my UCL, my Tommy John ligament. So doctor said not quite enough where we would want to recommend surgery.
Yeah.
So he said, let's just rehab it, and go for a year. So I redshirted a year in college. After that, came back, felt like I was throwing in slow motion. Like I lost so much velocity. Had to work very hard to try and get velocity back.
Yeah.
Finally was able to get
Do you think that was do you think that was from not just not pitching, or do you think that it actually had something to do more with the injury?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I'm not really sure. I think part of it had to do with the injury. You could kind of feel it in the arm a little. And looking back, I wish I would have just bit the bullet, gone through with it, got the surgery, took my chances. And back then, it was Tommy John was not always a guarantee. I feel like now it's much more, you get Tommy John, you come back, you rehab it, you're back to where you were when you had it at the first place. But back, when I was in college and high school, it wasn't really a guaranteed thing. A lot of guys you saw in Major League Baseball, too, where Tommy John was almost 50-50 if they were going to come back the way they were.
Yeah, and now it's almost just like a natural progression. He has it this time, and then whatever it is, 11, is it? I can't remember what the schedule is, but it's just like clockwork almost.
Yeah, and it's almost guaranteed. I mean, I'm sure it's not, but you see guys like even Shohei Ohtani, or
well, did he have it, or is he having it, or because he's not pitching this year? I know that.
Yeah, so he had it at the end of the year.
Okay.
And he'll just be hitting, I think, this year.
So he actually got a Tommy John.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. No, he had a picture with the whole scar up his elbow and everything, and.
So did you wind up getting it?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't. I ended up rehabbing it, came back, and then I had to figure out how to actually pitch.
Yeah.
In high school, you can get by with just throwing hard and throwing it by kids.
Sure.
Then I had to figure it out a little bit, be a little more crafty. So
You're a righty?
I'm a righty.
Okay.
Yep. So I developed a splitter and got really good with that.
Yep.
And so coming in
and that's
as
a
reliever,
split finger fastball that's sort of like a fastball that drops, right?
Yes.
At the end?
Yep. Yep. So I got it to a point where you could throw that splitter and get right about to home plate, and then it would just drop off a table.
Yeah.
And that was my most effective pitch.
Okay.
And coming in as a reliever, I'm sure the other teams in the NSIC would watch me warm up and think, this guy's not throwing that hard, maybe touching 80, 81.
Yeah.
But then I'd throw that pitch, and that was really my bread and butter.
You confused them.
Yep.
Did you have a curveball or anything like that?
Yep. I threw a curveball, pretty big breaking ball.
Yep.
Lot slower. Usually hung it a lot, got hit really hard. No,
What's the conventional wisdom these days on teaching the kids a curveball? Because I know there was like this whole controversy like 20 years ago that like you should never have a child that who hasn't fully physically developed yet to start learning the curveball because they wind up with elbow problems and all that.
Yep.
So what's the thinking these days on that?
What we try to promote is, we don't push it even in junior high. Usually around 8th grade. 7th and 8th grade, we try to really focus on mechanics. And then developing fastball and changeup. 4-seam, 2-seam, and changeup. And then curveball does come in. A lot of 7th graders know how to throw a curveball. They've learned. Kids want to. It's one of those things. Kids always want to do what they're not supposed to do, kind of deal. And it's the same in baseball. They're like, I want to learn how to throw a curveball, and they'll try it at 12 years old. And once they get to that full 60-foot, 6-inch mound, then they start doing it more and more. They really want to get it. So we usually have them in junior high, but we try not to promote it a whole lot. And if they do, then we want to make sure we're teaching them how to throw it the right way. If their mechanics aren't very sound in throwing a curveball, we want to make sure that they get it sound before they commit to that.
Okay, so it's kind of just a cautious yes.
Yeah, it is. I would say it's a cautious yes in junior high. But I think it's still similar to what it used to be, that we're very, tentative, or we tentatively allow them to throw it, but we don't really recommend it.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. So you had a cutter, right? Or basically, a sinking fastball.
Yep.
And a curveball. What about any of these other pitches that you hear? You hear so much about at the major league level, like a splitter or a splinker or whatever these other ones are. That like the pitches that break away rather than up and down and all that stuff.
Yeah, sliders have come so far.
Right.
I mean, that used to be something like that wasn't. I shouldn't say it wasn't common. I think they've changed a little bit of the terminology, and some guys threw a little flatter curveballs, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, if I just throw this a little harder, if I get the right action on it. And so we've seen a lot more sliders develop. There are some interesting pitches out there. That Johan Duran throws that splinker at like 90 some miles an hour, and you're like,
well, he's just a freak. I mean, he's probably the best relief pitcher in the world. I mean, I mean, if he's up there, if he's not the one,
I would agree.
I know I would definitely not want to stand in there.
No, thank you.
I just honestly, I have no idea. One time I was at a game and Aroldis Chapman was pitching. And we actually got moved down because for various reasons there were some there were a lot of empty seats behind home plate, and I think it was like in the 5th inning or something like that. They figure, okay, these people aren't going to come. It looks bad on TV, so we're going to just get these people and ask them if they want to go down and sit there. And I was like, yeah, sure. So we got to sit down there real close to home plate when he was pitching, and I couldn't pick up the ball. I mean, it was incredible. I don't know how people can do it,
Yeah, it's incredible.
I mean, you almost have to start your swing while the ball is still in the guy's hand, right?
Yeah, almost.
But okay, so you played for 4 years at BSU, or you redshirted a year and then played for 3 or 4 years?
Yep, I played a couple more years after that, and then had another arm injury reoccurring again, and decided at that point, I think it's time to hang it up. And
do you pitch now for the E-Sox, or do you play just a normal?
I'll play positions and pitch.
Okay.
Yep, whatever they need me to do.
Yep. And so do they like how many games do they play in the summer?
Depends on. I think you can schedule some more games outside, but we get our set amount of league games, and it's somewhere around like 15-ish.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Where do the E-Sox play their home games?
They'll play at the high school field also.
Okay.
And this year we're not sure if there will be a team.
Oh.
We're not not positive on that.
Yeah.
We'll see if we get any more guys coming out, but
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. There's some kind of cool little like ballpark stadiums in these little towns and stuff around here. Like what are some of those they're just kind of like you come across it, you're like, huh, that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, Minnesota's very unique with our town ball. And there's towns around here like Midway.
Yeah.
Midway's not really even a town.
No, it's not.
It's a baseball field, basically,
Yeah,
that's at an intersection of country roads. And, cool ball field. And then Nimrod Nats play.
The Nats.
Yep. And that one's pretty cool. It's basically a baseball field and a bar and a campground.
Yeah.
Wolf Lake is another one. That's pretty neat, too, out by the lake itself. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool small town baseball fields.
What do you think? What kind of? I mean, you're a school teacher too, right?
Yep.
What kind of life lessons can a person learn from playing baseball?
Yeah, I think it was the late Texas head coach Augie Garrido said baseball is a metaphor of life, and I think it really is. There's so many life lessons to be learned playing the game of baseball.
Any that stick out at you?
I would say that dealing with adversity is a big one. Baseball is a game of failure. You could go and hit 10 at-bats, and you could strike out 7 of them, get a hit in just 3, and you're an all-star.
Yeah,
you're batting 300. You're really good. Not many sports are like that where you fail more times than you succeed, and you're very good at it. That's not the case in most sports.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good life lesson in just developing how to deal with it mentally.
I had someone tell me once that baseball was the ultimate team sport, and I thought, well, wait a minute, now it doesn't really, because it all seems like there's so much of it that's just individual performances, almost like in a tennis match or something, one guy against another guy, the pitcher against the batter and all that stuff. But what I think that his point was that the chemistry of the baseball team really makes a big difference when it comes to the ultimate success or failure of the team.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's a huge part of it.
And just kind of working together, and I mean, you execute a double play or something like that. It's a great feeling.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I agree. I get what you're saying too. It's a lot of times reliant on some individual performances. You got to have a pitcher that throws strikes. Your pitcher doesn't throw strikes and walks everybody. It's hard to play as a team, behind the pitcher. If the pitcher's not doing their job, nobody else gets to do their job. So it just kind of relies on everybody doing their own individual performances for the team.
And also, I think something that's unique to baseball, maybe more so than in other sports, is that you can get down significantly in a baseball game and still come back.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like in a football game, you get down 4 or 5 times. I mean, we saw the Vikings game the other year. Forget about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, for the most part, you get down a lot, and you can just, kind of get demoralized. But if the other team scores 5-6 runs in the second inning of a doubleheader game, you got to think, hey, we can come back not only in this one, but we can come back and win the next one too, because there's also a lot of games in baseball, so it's more of like a marathon approach and a sprint and all that. But I think it's just, there's a lot of it that's just like, hey, let's not give up on this. If I get a hit, you get a hit, we're right back in this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We had one time I was coaching, and I coached previously a co-op between Hill City and Northland. And we had a game against a high school that's no longer even a high school, but Isle High School. And we were down by 6 runs in the bottom of the 7th with 2 outs.
Yep.
Nobody on base. Last out, down to our last out. We even were down to our last strike.
Yeah.
We came back and scored 7 runs and got a walk-off win. And I don't think anybody believed what just happened. It was insane. And I'm like, wow, that's only
and
in
that's
baseball.
That's why you got to stay. And I mean, that's why I remember I think it was it 2004, the year that the Red Sox won. I think they were down in the ALCS. They were down 3-0. Yep. They were down in the game, in the fourth game. I think it was all the way there. They were losing in the ninth inning of the game.
Yeah, I believe that was that the infamous Big Papi walk off.
Yeah. And I just remember I was watching the game, and I was just thinking to myself, why am I even watching this? This is pointless. Like, Boston's just gonna lose again. It's just gonna be the same old. But then that series became one of the most memorable series of all time because of the fact that they came back and not only won that game, but then came back and won the entire series. And then it wasn't like, it was like the U.S. Olympic team where, like, yeah, they beat Russia, but then now they got to go on and win. And, they actually went off and finished it off by winning the World Series that year, too.
Yeah.
But it just seems like in baseball, there's a reason to stick with it all the way to the end, because you never know. It's like, Yogi Berra, it's not over until it's over kind of thing.
Yeah.
How do you but in a game like that, the one you talked about where it was Northland and against Isle, or what was it, Northland and what was the other team?
Hill City.
Yep. Combined against Isle. You got a guy on the bench who's kind of hanging his head and all that stuff. Like, what do you tell somebody like that? What are some of the techniques that you use to try to get people back into the right state of mind to continue?
That's a great question, because you can say it all you want to them about, hey, it's never give up, never give up, never give up. And I think sometimes it almost takes the experience for them to realize, oh, yeah, we really could come back and win this. Mm-hmm. We had a game last year here in Park Rapids against Fergus Falls that went back and forth, and we ended up winning in extra innings, and it was kind of the same deal. We'd come back and score 3 runs, and then the top half of the inning, in extras, they'd score a couple runs.
Yeah.
And so you're just trying to tell the guys on the bench, hey, stay up. We've done this before. We can do it again. Yeah. You can score runs too. Mm-hmm. Don't lose faith in it. Just see it all the way through till the final out is made.
And you also have to identify probably some underclassmen who are good at motivating their, showing leadership.
Yep.
Because that's really helpful too. Because coaches can only go so far with the coaches, but you have obviously a lot of credibility as a coach, but sometimes it takes the senior leadership to talk to the guys and rally the troops and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having that self-motivation within the team, within the kids, you can't replicate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always kind of this famous saying of, you can want it really bad, but do they want it as bad as you do? Mm-hmm. And it takes the right group of guys.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'll just ask you a few general questions about Major League Baseball.
Sure.
Before we get too far here, but okay, I asked this question to a lot of people over the years. Cy Young has won 511 games. Do you think this record is even possible? Do you think it's even possible to consider that record ever being broken?
Oh, it could be. I do think it is possible. I think we're seeing now, I think there's been a change in the longevity of pitchers that you're starting to see more and more of. Used to be that as pitchers got, like Johan Santana, you see them pitch in their prime, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're incredible. But it took a little bit of time for them to get into that sweet spot. Not everybody shows up in the big leagues and is an all-star on day one. I think of Mike Trout was pretty good when he first came in. Bryce Harper, pretty good when he first came in. You don't get a lot of those guys, though, especially as pitchers. That's a tough thing to break into. But you're seeing, I think, Justin Verlander is 42 or
Yeah,
something.
it's a great example. Mm-hmm.
You know, so if you're seeing guys competitively pitch at the big league level, even in the playoffs, when they're in their 40s, yeah,
Scherzer's probably up there too, right?
Yeah, I think he is
might
too.
Be 40. Yeah.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, if they can continue,
it's just that number is so high. I mean, you think like, okay, if I have 5 20 wins, and I don't think anybody wins 20 games anymore.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's tough.
It's just the number of, you know, they with all the relief pitchers and everything like that. They're just not getting the win. They're not staying in if they're in trouble. Plus, you know, there's all the innings limitations and stuff. I mean, you'd have to have 5 20-win seasons, and then just do that 5 times. Oh, and then win another 12 games.
Yeah.
I mean, no. But you know, I think what I always think about, like, you know, it's I think it's sort of like it's related to what you're saying is about, you know, yeah, if you're gonna break his record. I think you would not only have to pitch into your 40s, I think you'd have to pitch into your 50s. Yeah. And I mean, let's just be honest.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, you'd have to be 18, 19, you
uh-huh.
know, coming out of high school, drafted, sign, and start actually seeing big league time very young, and then be dominant.
Just absolutely dominant, right?
Tough. I think tougher to do as a pitcher than it is to do as a hitter.
Oh, absolutely.
Because now we're seeing guys throw 90s in high school.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, like Mike Trout or a Bryce Harper as an example, they're seeing that plenty of times even in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're being able to make a big jump into the big leagues.
Yeah.
Pitching, boy, that's tough because it's not just throwing hard. It's learning how to pitch.
Well, right. And then it's also the mental game, too. I mean, you come out of high school. And, you know, I mean, like some players, like in hockey, Gretzky, Lemieux, they're ready at age 18 to just go out and play with men.
Yeah.
But there's something about baseball that's different. I mean, I think you could have a great arm, you could have good control. I mean, you could throw 100 miles an hour at age 18. But then now I'm going to go and now I have to be involved in a 162 game season. So we're going from a 20 game to a 162. Yeah. But then also now I got to face guys like, you know, the Harpers and the Trouts and the, you know, Garcias and whoever else, you know, that's out there on a day in and day out basis. And that's going to be intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, could you imagine being 18 years old and you're facing Mike Trout or Shohei Ohtani at the plate and you're like, I don't think it matters what I throw. Whatever I throw, he's probably going to hit 400 feet the other way. So,
and you just got to figure that, I mean, some of this intimidation stuff too, because, you know, baseball, there's a lot of that involved in it too, you know. I mean, there's a lot of, you know,
that, and you're going from maybe a couple hundred fans at a game to thousands and thousands of fans. But
then you just got to have 25 years in a row of 20 game winning seasons.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is it impossible to get there?
It's not impossible.
Probably not.
It's not impossible.
Is it likely?
I doubt it.
Yeah, I doubt it.
The guy the first time I had this conversation, I remember, was when they called, what was his name? He pitched for King Felix Hernandez.
Okay.
You know, because I think he actually was pitching in the major leagues at age 19, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
But you just don't see that. You just don't.
Yeah.
Okay. Controversial Hall of Famers. Bonds, Clemens. Where do you come down on that?
Ooh. Boy. You know, that's a tough one. I'm a teacher, so it's kind of like there's a part of me that's like, no, you got to follow the rules, you know? You got to do what you're told there.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. It's also difficult because, you know, steroids certainly give you an unfair advantage because you're able to put on so much muscle, and that gives you more power, especially in home runs, or gives you more velocity when you're pitching.
Yeah.
But you still have to go out and do it, you know? And so I understand both sides of that argument. I think the problem is if, let's say that we sway some public opinion on this and we say, let's just everybody was doing steroids in the steroid era, let them in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but isn't there always going to be a little bit of an asterisk then by it?
Well, it's not fair to the record book. I think that it's more than anything is that, I mean, I get it. Everybody, let's not say everybody, because we know it's not everybody, but there were a lot of players that in that era, pitchers and hitters alike, that were doing steroids. And I think there was a lot of pressure on, I think it was unfair to the guys who refused to do steroids too, because they knew everybody else was doing it, and they're like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to follow the rules.
Yeah.
And therefore this guy is going to get a contract that maybe I should have got, or, I could have gotten more. But because all these stats are so out of whack because everybody's doing steroids, like my, 20 homer season, whereas like if nobody was doing steroids, maybe I'm up there in, the top 20, I'm not saying that number is probably not accurate because I think Bonds probably would have hit 30, 40 home runs even without steroids.
Yeah. But
you get into the 50s, 60s, 70s and you're just like, come on, man.
Yeah.
It's not right. It's not fair to the people.
I would agree with that. I think ultimately my opinion on it is I don't think you can let them in because of that. I don't. And I think if they ever were, there's still a lot of people who are going to look at it like, yeah, but are they?
Yeah, I don't like them. I don't like them in the record books more than anything, because it's like, like who holds the record for all-time home runs, and it's Barry Bonds, and like, I understand that a record is a historical fact. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's just if you ask the question, who hit more home runs in the history of Major League Baseball, who hit the most? The answer is, factually speaking, it is Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
So he kind of he wrecked the record books, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
Because you put an asterisk, but still, he passed Hank Aaron, who probably didn't do steroids. I'm guessing he didn't do it if he hadn't invented the steroids and all that stuff, and. So I don't know. Because you look at like Lance Armstrong, won all those, however many 7 Tour de France's, and you're like, yeah, well, everybody he beat was doing the same stuff as him, but why do we take it away? Well, I just, again, because it's like, is it fair to the history books? Is it fair to the is it fair to the fans more, than anything? So
it's a good point.
Mm-hmm. Rule changes. Did you like the introduction of the rule against the shift, and then also the pitch clock?
So the pitch clock I don't mind. Mm-hmm. I think that was always it was one of those like mental wrinkles that were thrown in there. Could you stay locked in at the plate for that long if a pitcher was really, really slow? But I like it. I like it because I think it's going to bring more viewers to baseball, which ultimately is going to help the sport.
Because the game's shorter?
Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of people thought, gosh, I don't really want to go to a 3-hour-long game or watch a 3-hour-long game. And now you cut it down to under 2.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. It's more action. It's more fast-paced. I like that. Yeah. I think that was a good move, ultimately. And I understand the more purist form of baseball where you're like, I don't like any of these rule changes.
Well, it's like I like to go out at on a 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon in July. I don't mind if I'm sitting there for 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
But I'm not everybody.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think there's a lot of people who love and appreciate baseball for what it is, and like we could go to a game and watch a 5-hour-long game and still leave there just happy as all get out because we just love baseball, But I think for fans and the growth of the sport and keeping it going into younger generations, I like that move. The shift part, I don't know. Part of me thinks if a team's going to shift against you, be a better hitter and hit it where they're not at.
Did you tell that to Kepler?
Yeah, I know. So I do think that's part of, even for Major League Baseball, if you're a professional hitter, adapt.
Got to be able to hit it to both sides of the field and go the opposite way and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's one of those things where, I think the pitch clock, it doesn't really affect anything in terms of the record books. Although, you could say it might, because some guys were notoriously slow workers.
Yeah.
and none of these hitters now have to deal with that. Like, they know pretty much when the next pitch is going to come. But the shift one is, again, it's like sort of like, well, then the guys who had to hit into the shift was harder for them, and ultimately that's a move that's going to increase offense. You know? And so I don't know. I kind of would just wish they would leave things alone in some ways, but on the other hand, I do understand that. I mean, in going to games, it is kind of enjoyable to have the pace moving and everything else like that. But get a little nostalgic for some of these, like, where the pitcher's on the mound and, working real slow, taking 2 or 3 deep breaths before, and then the batter stepping out of the box. And was it like A-Rod was always adjusting his batting gloves and all that stuff? It just kind of got to be, I don't know, ridiculous. But okay, so finally and briefly, the Twins are going to start their season coming up soon. This year, the payroll took a significant cut. At first, it was attributable, or the official version of it was that it was because they lost a contract with the Bally Sports Network and all that, so they didn't have the 50 or some odd million that came with that. They just did re-up with Bally. No, they haven't released the figure that they got for this season, but suffice it to say that they got something. Yet, surprisingly, they didn't increase their payroll significantly, or they didn't even maintain the payroll.
Yeah,
I think the payroll actually went down by maybe $20 million from last year to this year. Gosh, it just feels like it's, you kind of hoped with the new poll ad and the fact that they signed Correa and everything like that things would be different. But I felt like this was the time to strike while the iron's hot. And I know that Snell and Montgomery are out there. They've already said we're not going to do it. But I mean, in light of that, I still think that they're going to win the division. Agree or disagree?
I agree. I think they will. I think they're benefiting from a weak AL Central.
Yeah.
And they're feeling like they don't have to splurge a whole lot in payroll to remain on top.
Yeah.
And I just think that's unfortunate, because I think Twins fans can see through that a little bit, and I think, like, we look at that and go, okay, great, we can beat the White Sox and the Tigers, but when we start playing the Houston Astros in the playoffs, how are we going to get past them?
Yeah, and last year in the 3-game series against Toronto, we had 2 pitchers, and lo and behold, those guys carried us to the victory. But when you start getting into the longer series, it's difficult. It's hard to get in there without trying to sign some big name pitchers or whatever the case may be. But I do think, though, that the Twins this year, the bullpen is going to be one of their strengths, because they managed to supplement it. They have a lot of bullpen depth and everything else this year. So when was the first time that you went to a Twins game?
I went to. How old was I? That's a good question. I was in first grade. I remember that. Yeah. So I was in first grade when I went to the first Twins game. So I was somewhere around 7 years old.
What was that experience like?
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah. It was cool. Went to the Metrodome.
Yeah.
Saw the Twins there. Yeah, it was
fun. You remember
fun.
Who was pitching that day, or who was?
I want to say it was Brad Radke threw.
Okay.
Yep. That was It was fun. I remember the Twins won.
Yeah.
And then I remember thinking as a young kid that every time I go, the Twins will win, and that wasn't quite the case, but yeah.
Was Kirby in that game? Do you remember? Or
no.
That would have been after.
No, Kirby would have been, I think he was done.
Is it 94 or something?
Yeah. Yeah, so that would have been before I was there going to a game.
Yeah. I remember first time I went to a ball game, my dad took me, but the thing was that he didn't tell me we were going to go. So we were just in the city, and he's like, oh, we're gonna get out here. I'm like, okay. Like, I remember thinking, like, this is weird. Like, what are we doing here in Minneapolis? Where are we going? And then just walking in and seeing that and experiencing that for the first time, I think that hooks a person, from a young age. It's just such a cool experience to take a young kid to the ball game. And so,
yeah, I agree. It is. Yeah. It's eye-opening, too, when you see the vastness of the field and the stands and the people, yeah. And you're, oh, my gosh.
The sights, the sounds, the smells,
yeah.
and all that stuff. All right, Kevin Murphy, it's been really fun talking baseball with you here today, and we're wishing you the best for the season. Park Rapids will be following you on the Facebook page and trying to get out to some of these games and everything like that. So yeah, hope you have a great season and that you'll come back sometime.
Awesome. You bet. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
You bet.